A good vach, Shavua Tov. A good week to you, my holy sisters and brothers. It's great to be with you, even during the hiatus of AT Daily. Just let me know if there's any issues. I think it should be working fine. We mentioned a bunch of times, Nina and I wrote a movie, Guns N' Moses. I'm directing it. Things have accelerated exponentially. We have our production office open every day. The crew is growing. It's super exciting. There's no way I can be teaching the class during this period. But I miss you guys so much. So I thought we would just do a little flash AT Daily. It's actually from a page of 2 days ago or 3 days ago, page 105. And I'm not going to do the whole page, but just a beautiful little story. I was a few days behind, so I happened to read it today on Shabbos, and then it intersected so beautifully with what this Shabbos is all about, Shabbos Bereshis. So we had Sukkot, and then the last day of Sukkot was Simchas Torah this past week. And so we ended our yearly cycle of reading the Torah, and of course immediately began again every time we make a siyum, right? Whether it's a siyum on reading the Torah each year or a siyum on the 7.5-year cycle of Talmud study known as Daf Yomi, or a siyum on a particular tractate. What are we really celebrating? That we have now a wonderful new familiarity with what we just finished, which will help us when we begin it again, right? And so every time a siyum is not about celebrating what we finished, it's about the opportunity to renew this cycle, to go on, to bring that new connection that we have with the volume that we just finished learning into our next bit of learning. So this Shabbos, we're reading the first Torah portion, Bereshis, in the beginning of God's creating the heaven and the earth. And within this, we have the story of the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve being expelled from the Garden of Eden, Adam and Chava. And then the incredibly troubling story of their children, Cain and Abel, right? Cain and Abel. Cain kills Abel. And it just reflects all these threads. We're going to weave them together tonight in a short class. It's only going to be about a 10-minute class, maybe a little longer, but we're going to weave all these threads together. So, who's with us on a Saturday night? Paul in the Great Northwest, Venida in West Virginia, Belle in Texas, Lou in Modein in Israel, Melissa in Great Neck, Bill in Mid-Missouri. Paula says, great Shabbat Shalom. Paula says, looking great, thank you. Sandy, we miss you too. Randy, not sure how I subscribe to this, but Shalom from Colorado. Great to have you with us. Ann in Merced, over there on the YouTube side, Lynn in North Texas, Marjorie in Georgia, Harith in Canada. Welcome, everybody. All right, so real quick. First, we have this story from the daf. So technically, this daf was a few days ago, but it was during this week, right? That it was exactly the transition from finishing the Torah on Simchas Torah and opening this new Torah portion. And I happen to read it today on Shabbos. Yes, I fall a few days behind during pre-production and production on the movie. We'll have some exciting announcements about the movie soon, by the way, but not quite ready to reveal to the public yet. Okay, so we have this story. It's at the bottom of page 105b here in Tractate Kesubos. This is the 15th volume of the Talmud, the laws of marriage contracts. Chapter 13 in Tractate Kesubos. What do we have but a digression on judgment, right? On judgment and when judges judge cases. And we have a very specific mitzvah in the Torah that a judge will not take a bribe, right? As if it needed to be said. Apparently it needed to be said. It's in the Torah. So a judge shall not take a bribe under any circumstances. And then we have a series of incidents that illustrate it's obvious that it would be a corruption of justice if one of the litigants in a case before a judge gave the judge some money and then, he was inclined to give a favorable judgment to the one who gave him money. That's the easy and obvious case of bribery. What if both people, or even let's say one of the litigants gives him some money, not give me a favorable outcome, but hey, keep it honest. Keep it honest. Just make sure you keep it honest. Rodney Dangerfield in Caddyshack. All right, keep it honest. If he took that money, just, not with expectation of an outcome, but he's just saying to the judge, keep it honest. Is that a bribe? Yes, that's a bribe. The judge is absolutely not allowed to take that. What if it's a case where the judge says, okay, in order for me to sit in judgment on your case, I require a fee. So both sides pay the fee. Now, according to some opinions, that also is prohibited. He's not allowed to take money from litigants for giving judgment. He can absolutely draw a salary from the community to serve as judge, but he doesn't take a fee from the litigants. Now, this would be different than sort of modern notion of arbitration, where the litigants, do pay a fee to the arbitrator. But that's not a judge. A judge is not an arbitrator. A judge is going to rule based on Torah what is the outcome of this case, and he can't be paid by the litigants. What if he's not being paid to sit in judgment, but he's being paid for his unemployment? Meaning he has to be paid just because normally he wouldn't be judging cases. He has a career. He's a big businessman. He's going to experience a loss to come and judge this case. Maybe he would be able to take that kind of money. But even in that case, it would be difficult. It would be better if they could find someone to go fill in for him so he doesn't experience a loss, but he doesn't receive money directly from the litigants. And then while we were discussing those kinds of cases, it came up this idea that there was an incident where one of the sages was getting across a river, and where the ferry was going to reach the other side of the river. He was going to have to step in the water, and some guy came up and sort of put like a stepping stone there so that this judge wouldn't have to get his feet wet. He says, "Oh, thank you very much. Why did you happen to be here?" And the man says, "Well, I was actually coming to see you, judge, because I have a case to bring before you." And then the judge says, "Well, thank you for what you did, but now I cannot judge your case because you did a favor for me. My feelings are going to be inclined to be, favorable and beneficial to you. And for that reason, I have to recuse myself from being a judge in your case." A bunch of incidents like that. And if somebody, for example, brought him a gift, he was bringing the gift anyway. And then he says, "And by the way, I'm going to come before you for judgment." So then the judge has to say, "Well, then take the gift back because now I can't accept it and I cannot judge your case. I can neither keep the gift nor judge your case." So apropos these kinds of incidents and teachings about the absolute incorruptibility of judges and how they must never even have an appearance of impropriety by taking any money or favors or any kind of earned goodwill from the litigants, we have this story. Bottom of 105b. The Gemara relates there was a certain man who once brought to Rav Anan a basket of small fish. And he said to him, "What are you doing here?" And the man said to him, "I have a case to present before you." So Rav Anan would not accept the basket from him. And he said to him, "I am disqualified from presiding over your case due to your actions. You sought to give me a gift. I can neither accept the gift nor judge your case because even though I don't take the gift, I know that you have good feelings toward me. I would have good feelings toward you. That makes me biased. I can't judge your case." The man said to Rav Anan, "In that case, I do not need the master's judgment. However, let the master accept my gift anyway, so that the master does not prevent me from presenting first fruits." What does the mitzvah of first fruits, bikurim, have to do with this situation? The mitzvah of first fruits is that when the temple was standing, farmers in Israel would bring the first fruits of their crop, up to a 60th of their produce, to Jerusalem during festivals, especially Sukkot, and they would use it to decorate the whole altar area. And then after the festival was over and the presentation of the first fruits had been made, those fruits are given to the Kohanim, given to the priests as a gift. and had the similar laws as teruma, right? The portion of the tithe that you put aside for priests, in terms of like wheat teruma, or other kinds of teruma, that is a gift that only priests can eat. It must be eaten in a state of holiness, and only priests can eat it. Likewise with bikurim. But here we have somebody who came to Rav Anan for a judgment, and incidentally was bringing him a gift of a basket of small fish. And he says, please accept the gift, even if you're not going to judge my case, so that you don't prevent me from observing the mitzvah of first fruits. So what does first fruits at the temple have to do with this basket of small fish being brought to a Torah scholar, Rav Anan? As it is taught in a Baraisa, 2 Kings 4:42, and there came a man from Baal Shalisha, and he brought the man of God bread of the first fruits, 20 loaves of barley and fresh ears of corn in his sack. But did Elisha, the recipient of these gifts, eat first fruits? Elisha was a prophet, but he was not a Kohen. First fruits can only be eaten by a Kohen. And Elisha was not a priest. So rather, that verse in 2 Kings comes to tell you that whoever brings a gift to a Torah scholar, it is as though he has presented first fruits. And so this visitor to Rav Anan wished to fulfill this mitzvah, right? Or the mitzvah of giving a gift to a Torah scholar earns you a credit in Shemayim, in heaven, as it were, like you brought first fruits to the priest when the temple was standing. So Rav Anan then answered this man, I do not want to take it from you. But now that you have explained to me the reason that you wish to give it to me, I will accept it from you. I don't need a gift from you, because I'm a judge and you came to me for a case. Even though I'm not going to do your case, I still wouldn't accept the gift if it was just a gift from me. But now that you're telling me that me taking the gift from you enables you to fulfill a mitzvah, so okay, I will accept it from you. So Rav Anan sent the man to Rav Nachman, and Rav Anan also sent with him a letter. And the letter said to Rav Nachman, let the master judge this man's case, because I, Anan, am disqualified from judging his cases. Now, when Rav Nachman received this man and received the letter, and it said, a letter from his colleague Rav Anan in another city, and the letter says that I, Rav Anan, cannot judge this man's cases, what does Rav Nachman think to himself? Rav Nachman said to himself, from the fact that Anan sent me this letter, I can conclude from here that the reason he is disqualified from judging the case is because he is his relative, right? Now, Anan didn't explain this whole backstory of the man brought me a gift, I couldn't accept the gift, I ended up taking the gift just to satisfy this mitzvah, but that's why I disqualified myself from the case. All he said is, I'm disqualified from judging this man's cases. So Rav Nachman made an assumption. And the assumption that Nachman made is that this man who's coming before him to get a case judged is a relative of Rav Anan. And that's the reason that Rav Anan would not judge his case, because it's a relative. Obviously, you'd be biased in the case of a relative. Now, at that time, when this man arrived looking to have his case judged, Rav Nachman was involved in a case involving orphans, right? So Nachman was in the middle of a trial. Maybe it was kind of an extended trial. There was a lot of issues. It was an orphan, right? So an orphan means that a man died, he left children, maybe he left a widow. We've seen so many of these cases here in Tractate Kesubos. There was a big estate, and they're working through a big complicated financial case where, depending on which creditors and what widow have rights in the estate, what is going to be left for the orphans. But so now Rav Nachman says to himself that he's received a relative, as far as he knows, of his colleague, another Torah scholar, Rav Anan. So Rav Nachman says, well, this is a positive mitzvah for judges to judge cases properly. Like, I'm involved in this case for the orphans, and I have to finish that case and judge it properly. And this is a positive mitzvah to honor Torah scholars and their families. So Rav Nachman concluded that the positive mitzvah of giving honor to the Torah by honoring Torah scholars, and in this case, honoring the family of Torah scholars, that it would take precedence over just giving proper judgment. In other words, the case with the orphans, he will give a proper judgment, but we can postpone that justice for a few days or for a day or whatever the time period is. And in the meantime, I will, give public honor to this relative, is Rav Nachman's assumption, this relative of Rav Anan, and we'll hear his case right away. So therefore, he put aside the case of the orphans and he settled down to judge the case of that man under the mistaken assumption that he was a relative of Rav Anan. Once the other litigant in this man's case, right, the man who originally went to Rav Anan, he had a case that he needed judged. We don't even know what the underlying case is, but whatever, he needed judgment on a case, and he had a litigant, another litigant. Either he was being sued or he was suing someone. So there was another guy in his case. So once that other litigant saw the honor that was being accorded to the man who originally went to Rav Anan, and now the honor that's being accorded to him by Rav Nachman in Rav Nachman's court, so the other litigant in that case grew nervous until his mouth, i.e. his ability to argue his claim, became closed, and he lost the case. The other guy thought he was just in a regular, case with a regular guy, and now he realizes, I'm in a litigation against a family member, a close family member of a famous Torah scholar. Maybe my case is not so important. He became all tongue-tied, never gave a good argument, and so of course he lost the case that would have originally been brought before Rav Anan, but now it's being brought before Rav Nachman, and the man who originally brought the case to Rav Anan and now to Rav Nachman, he won his case because his opposing litigant became tongue-tied and offered no argument. And it was in this manner that justice was perverted by Rav Anan, albeit unwittingly and indirectly. What did Rav Anan do wrong? He said to the guy, you offered me a gift and you want me to judge your case. I can't judge your case and I won't accept the gift. And the man said, well, then just accept the gift so that I can fulfill the mitzvah of honoring a Torah scholar. And there Rav Anan said, okay. And then gave him a letter without a full explanation of why he was disqualifying himself from the man's case. So could Rav Anan have prevented this miscarriage of justice? A more complete letter. I've disqualifying myself from judging this man's case because he brought me a gift. I didn't accept it, but now I can't judge his case. If that letter had been complete, this wouldn't have happened. And if Rav Anan, once he said, I won't accept the gift, and the guy said, well, enable me to fulfill the mitzvah of honoring a Torah scholar, he still shouldn't have accepted the gift. Maybe he was helping the guy do a mitzvah. Why shouldn't he accept the gift? But maybe because he's a judge and at all costs he has to avoid any appearance of impropriety, maybe he still shouldn't have accepted the gift. At any rate, he accepted the gift. And because of that, and the incomplete letter that accompanied the man to Rav Nachman, justice was perverted. What was the consequence? Elijah the prophet was accustomed to come and visit Rav Anan, as the prophet was teaching him the statements that would later be recorded in the book known as Seder de Eliyahu, the order of Elijah. Rav Anan was an incredible Torah scholar, a man so prominent, so righteous, so elevated in his Torah study, so elevated in his personal attributes that he merited that the prophet Elijah, right, who never died, Elijah was taken up, and because he was taken up, he can return. And so we have stories in various places in the Talmud that Elijah visits people. Right? Certain Torah scholars merited to have conversations with Elijah, and he would reveal to them things that they could not otherwise know. It wasn't prophecy. They weren't being told by God what to say to the Jewish people. But a visit from Elijah was, a rare and wonderful, wonderful thing. And Rav Anan merited to have regular visits from Elijah, who Elijah was helping him write a book. Right? And this book would come to be known as the Order of Elijah. And I'll explain more about this book, The Order of Elijah, but it's an incredible book. We have it. This book exists. It was written in Hebrew. and it has all kinds of teachings in it. And it's understood that Rav Anan was able to write it because of his direct interactions with Elijah long after Elijah had left this world and would occasionally return. So what happened? Once Rav Anan did this, and he caused a miscarriage of justice, unintentional, unwittingly, but maybe negligently. Once Rav Anan did this and he caused this miscarriage of justice, Elijah departed from him, would not come back and visit him. They were in the middle of writing the book, and now Elijah won't come back. Rav Anan sat in observance of a fast, and he prayed for mercy, and Elijah came back. However, when Elijah came after that, he would scare him, as he would appear in frightening forms. And Rav Anan made a box where he settled himself down, and he sat before Elijah until he took out for him, meaning that Elijah taught him all of his Seder. And this is what the sages mean when they say Seder de Eliyahu Rabbah and Seder Eliyahu Zuta. In other words, the Seder de Eliyahu, the order of Eliyahu, this book that Rav Anan wrote, was divided into two parts. The first part, which is about 2/3 of the book, is called the Greater Seder de Eliyahu. And the latter part, after this incident, after he lost having Elijah in his life and made an atonement and prayed for mercy, and Elijah returned for him and finished the dictation, but not in the comfortable way like the first part. So the second part is called the Minor Seder de Eliyahu, the minor order of Eliyahu. He got the information that he needed, but it's almost like they were, they were study partners on the best of terms during the writing of the first 2/3 of the book. Then Elijah wouldn't visit him, and then when Elijah finally came back, it was always a scary experience, and that was a shorter part of the book, and that's called the Minor Seder de Eliyahu. Now, what happened? Right? What happened here? I mean, is Elijah so exacting that this Rav Anan, who really didn't do anything on purpose, tried to do the right thing, but ended up making a mistake, and it caused Elijah to flee from his presence and not come back? Okay, so clearly Rav Anan did something wrong. So then he made a teshuvah, he made an atonement, and then Elijah came back to him. But when Elijah came back, it was always a scary experience. It wasn't like it was before. So was the atonement successful or not? He was able to finish the book, but if it always was written in fright during the visits from Elijah in the latter part of the book, is that part of the book somehow lesser? Is it just fewer pages, or is it somehow less convincing, less meaningful? Or is it more meaningful? Now, that question, we ask it as we can't, I read this today while it was still Shabbos Bereshis, and we're involved in the study of the first Torah portion of the Torah, the creation of the world. And there are two incidents of teshuvah there, of making an atonement. So what happened? God creates the world, God creates the humans, God creates the Garden of Eden, says to Adam, Rishon, the first man, you can eat everything in the garden, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, do not eat. Right? Do not eat that. And also there's a tree of life planted in the middle of the garden, and evidently we're not meant to eat that either. So after the snake, the serpent, the wily creature, says to Eve, right, to Chava, oh, God didn't really mean it. If you eat it, it won't be so bad. Actually, something great will happen. You should try it. She eats it. She doesn't want to commit the only sin by herself, so she goes to her husband and says, hey, you should try this. It's not bad. He eats it. God comes out, right? They hide from him. Why are you hiding? We're naked. Who told you were naked? And obviously they're busted, right? They ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And what does Adam do, right? Does he start by saying, I'm so sorry. You told me, you gave us one rule and I broke it. No, what does he do? He passes the blame. He says, this woman that you gave me, she gave me, and I. Now, here is where Hebrew and knowledge of Hebrew is so helpful in understanding what the Bible says. Because when you read this passage in almost every translation ever made, you will read, right? You will read, where is it? And you said, okay. And it says, Vayomer ha'adam ha'isha asher nasata, this woman whom you gave me, nasati imadi, that you gave to be with me, this woman, she gave me, nisanenali, she gave to me, min ha'et, she gave to me from the tree of good and evil, va'oichel, she gave me from that tree, right? It's implied that it's a fruit. She gave me from that tree, and I ate. It's always translated as va'oichel, I ate. But that's not what it says. What it says in Hebrew, va'oichel, is, and I will eat. She gave me of this sin, right? She gave me of this prohibited food, and I will eat. And our sages interpret that verse and that use of the future tense in that word as Adam acknowledging that you made me a human, not an angel. Just as I committed this sin and I feel terrible before you, I'm so apologetic, I'm on my knees, I wish we hadn't done it. But at this moment, I'm not going to lie to you, God, and say that I will never sin again. I sinned. I'll probably sin again, and I'm so sorry. That's what Adam is saying. He's acknowledging his fault. He wants to never sin again, but he knows he probably will fall again. Now, God punishes them and rewards them. They're not going to be able to stay in the Garden of Eden. And by the sweat of his brow, man is going to have to earn his bread. Woman is punished with pain in childbirth. But if you think about how much time she spends having pain in childbirth versus how much time man has to eat by the sweat of his brow, right? Out there earning a living, right? 40 hours a week for 40 years, 50 years, 100 years. You know, these guys live 900 years. I mean, it's a long time he's out there toiling. Right? And maybe that's a just punishment for passing the buck after that original sin. But it's also true that when he is removed from his wife while he's working, he's not taking her for granted. When the spouses are apart, they long for each other. And that's a lesson about the way that we long for each other with the Lord. But still, Avraham, was able to acknowledge in his truth that I will sin again. And because he's like, I will sin again, he feels distanced from God. He's like, how can I ever come back to the beautiful, loving relationship that I originally had with God before we blew it? We'll never have that nearness again. And Adam was troubled by that for a very long time. And he wasn't able to find an answer to his trouble until the incident of his son killing his son. Cain slew Abel. What happened there? Right, so Cain and Abel, as soon as they were old enough, and they had seen, we have this in the Midrash from our sages, that they had seen their father Adam bring a sacrifice to the Lord. They had watched him slaughter an ox as a gift to the Lord. So they said, oh, okay, we have to give gifts to the Lord, the one who gives us everything. So they brought from what they knew, right? So Cain was a tiller of soil. He was the first farmer. And he gave from his crop, and he made what he considered a beautiful offering to the Lord from what he had grown. And think about that, like his father, was given a world that had oxen in it. He was told to name them. He gave the name to the ox, and then he took an ox and killed it before the Lord. You could say that the oxen were his, but it's a different relationship with the oxen, maybe than Cain had with the produce that he grew from the ground, right? He watched it grow, he watered it, he tended it, and after a long period of time when it was ready, he placed it before the Lord as a gift. Then his younger brother, Abel, saw what Cain had done. He said, well, I'll do what I know. Abel was a shepherd, and so he took his choicest sheep, right? He didn't take just any sheep. He He took the best sheep in the herd, maybe one that he had developed a friendship with, or you can imagine a shepherd has a close relationship with the animals that he tends to, and he took his favorite one, the choicest one, and slaughtered it as a gift to the Lord. And then the Lord, showed favoritism, right? The Lord accepted with love Abel's gift. We have a tradition that he accepted Cain's gift, but he was not endeared to Cain by Cain's gift. And Cain felt like he'd been rejected, like his lip was trembling. He was so upset. And in that moment, God says to him, listen, if you improve your behavior, you're going to get the reward. And basically, if you're going to be jealous of your brother because he had success and you're going to allow that to infuse you with anger and define yourself out of your jealousy of someone else, well, then you're going to get yourself in big trouble. And sin will crouch at your door. Feelings of jealousy lead to sin. And you can overcome it, right? God gave him good advice. Don't create an identity for yourself out of what you have or don't have compared to other people. Look to yourself, do your best, give God the best that you can give, and you'll do fine. And if you don't do that, this temptation will always be crouching at your door to commit a sin and go totally off the path. And how much time goes by? Like an instant, seemingly. And Cain picks a fight with Abel and kills him. Now, God comes to Cain and says, where's your brother? Am I my brother's keeper? The bloods of your brother cry out to me from the ground. Bloods, plural, because you destroyed not only Abel, but all of the children that Abel might have had. All of the descendants he would have had that now he won't have. You've murdered them all. You've committed the first murder in human history. Your sin is so great, and I will punish you that which was your identity, a farmer, a tiller of the soil, I remove that from you. The soil will never yield its produce to you. And now Cain makes a teshuvah. And he says, my penalty is too great. I cannot bear it, and I'm removed from your presence. And basically Cain is saying, I know I did bad. I want to make some kind of an atonement. I can't, because I've removed myself from you. Without you, I'm nothing. I cannot exist. And people will come and kill me because I just can't function in this world. And God rewards Cain and says, no one will ever kill you. You are marked with the mark of Cain. And anyone who harms you will be avenged, many, many fold times, right? So why would Cain be rewarded? He just committed the first murder, the most atrocious murder up until then in the history of the world. And he's rewarded with this protection from God. But really the reward was because of the depth of his atonement. And this is what Cain was able to teach Adam, his father, right? Adam had been troubled that he would never be able to come back into the good grace of God because of the sin he had committed in eating the fruit. And Cain was able to show him, listen, we can't make it whole. We can't make it like there was no sin. We can't make it like the sin never happened. But if we open our heart completely to God and say, without you, I can't do anything, then God will lift us up, as it were, and participate with us in our atonement. And we will have come back to God and come near to God. And we can do that every time we make a mistake. It's not an excuse. We're still going to be held accountable for the sins and the mistakes that we make. But God will always welcome us back to make an atonement, and we can even come closer to God than we were before if we say to God, please, I want to be near to you. I'm so sorry. Help me to be near to you. Help me to make an atonement. May it be the will before you that I give you my best, right? And when you have that kind of longing for God, you might not be able to be perfect in every area of your life. None of us can, because we're not tzaddikim, we're not saints, we're not righteous ones. But we can give God our best in every area. And ideally, we should maybe find one mitzvah, one commandment that we can give our all to and do it completely. Right? It would be good to have one commandment that you not only fulfill it to the best of your ability, but that it becomes so dear to you that you can fulfill it. You could say, yes, I do that commandment totally. I'm not slacking off at all. Right? So if you can find maybe one commandment that you could do completely correct, and all the other ones, you should follow them and do them the best that you possibly can. No, you can't do them all perfect. You can't do them all great. And sometimes you're going to not only not do them perfect, but you're going to just totally fail and transgress. Okay, but make an atonement as best as you can with your heart fully open to God and saying, help me be near to you. Help me do my best for you. Help me to make an atonement for you. And when Abraham learned that from his son Cain, when Adam learned that from his son Cain, he was able to come back, to this feeling of nearness with God that he had lost from the original sin until this moment. And Cain was never able to, make amends. He couldn't bring his brother back to life, but he lived a righteous life after that and did as much as he could for God to the best of his ability. And so Rav Anan, the story that we opened with from page 105, Tractate Kesubos, right? He caused a miscarriage of justice. He did it unintentionally, but he realized that maybe he was negligent and he was to blame, and he prayed for mercy, and I'm sure he begged God to help him never make that kind of a mistake again. Meanwhile, the book that he was writing in consultation with the prophet Elijah, who was coming to visit him, that came to be known as the Order de Eliyahu. Listen to what this book is. Seder de Eliyahu. Elijah is frequently mentioned as appearing to the sages in many places in the Gemara and Midrashim. See 2 Chronicles 21:12, which states that the king Jeroham received a letter from Elijah many years after Elijah departed from this world. Seder de Eliyahu, also known as Tana Devei Eliyahu, is comprised of two parts. Seder Eliyahu Rabbah, the greater part, which contains either 31 or 29 chapters, depending on the edition, and Seder Eliyahu Zuta, which in most versions is comprised of 15 chapters, right? So it's about 2/3 of the book before this incident that Rav Anan had, where he lost the friendship, as it were, with Elijah. Then he made the teshuvah. Then Elijah came back to him, and then the shorter part, the last third. Now, the entire book is written in Hebrew, and it contains many interpretations of verses, descriptions of events from the chronicles of the Jewish people from different eras, and several stories about Elijah himself, narrated in the first person, often beginning with Abba Eliyahu said. Many passages from this book are quoted in the Talmud and introduced with the phrase Tana Devei Eliyahu, the school of Elijah taught. So whenever we hear the school of Elijah taught, that's a teaching that came from Elijah through the Torah scholar Rav Anan, who had conversations with him in order to write that book. So first of all, Rav Anan merited to finish the book. Elijah came back to him. Now, was the latter third of the book somehow deficient? Is it somehow less, or is it simply shorter than the first part of the book? I would suggest, if we think about in our lives, when did we learn the most profound, the most lasting lessons? Was it from the good times, or was it from scary times? So maybe after he made the teshuvah, he was never with the same kind of comradeship that he had with Elijah in the first place. It was a heavier experience. But, I haven't read this book, so now I feel like I'd like to read it. But maybe that last third of Seder Eliyahu, based on these scary visitations from Elijah, really maybe took it to a whole other level. Generally speaking, the last third of a book is what that book is all about, right? When you get to the ending, the climax, the conclusion. I think the lessons that we could take away from here is sometimes we make terrible mistakes. We feel alienated from the people we hurt. We feel alienated from the God who made us and sent us into this world with a mission. We feel alienated from the truest, best version of ourselves. And we might be tempted to give up and start spiraling down and just make our behavior get worse and worse. But so much better to think we can always come back. God is always waiting for us to come back. And when we come back and give God our very best, even knowing that we'll fail and drop the ball, but we're going to give him our best, find areas where we can really do good. Every other area, just do our best and keep coming back to God. We can strengthen that relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with the Holy One, and we will elevate ourselves and we will be able to do better in this world and come closer to fulfilling our mission here and feel that closeness to God, to each other, and to our true selves. That's what I've got today. Oh, I meant to do a flash show talk for 10 minutes. I talked a little longer. I hope it was informative. I don't know if people have been asking questions. And Joseph saying, I never thought of Cain's statement as teshuvah. That's interesting. I always saw it as self-pity, but it does make sense that God shows kindness to him because he felt grief over it. I agree with you. All right, that is what I've got, my holy sisters and brothers, in this Flash AT Daily. I'll do them when I can. I'm not promising when they're going to come up again during this period, during the hiatus. We're going to come back to the regular class in January. The movie's going great. We're going to have some big casting announcements pretty soon. The crew is growing. Everything's coming together. It's so exciting. This is that really amazing time when the movie and all its elements are coming together. And we will try to do maybe some flash going live from the set just so that you guys can feel included in that. But I just can't stand to be away from you for too long. So I wanted to do a little Flash AT Daily teaching. All the best. May you all be blessed with a good, uplifting,